Cool. You want to jump into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. All right. Um, why don't I start? I'll introduce myself and then we'll talk about you because I guess you're the interviewee. So, hey everybody. I'm Danny, and I'm a 2015 Schulich Leader from the University of Toronto, and I graduated a couple years ago, and I moved out to Ireland, and I've been working out here. It's been all good, and looking forward to having a good chat with Wes today. But I'll let him introduce himself first.
Sure, yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Wesley. I'm also a 2015 Schulich Leader, but from the University of New Brunswick, and I graduated in 2020 with an electrical engineering degree, and I now work as a software developer based out of Vancouver, and also looking forward to this chat with Danny.
Awesome. Cool. So probably nobody in the network knows this, but we've done a lot of talking recently about kind of stuff that you've been working on, and we were lucky to do it over some travel. And actually, just thinking about it, for those who don't know, Wes and I got to know each other through the SLX Canada events, helping plan those remotely. So we were in different areas. And then the first time we met up was on a ski trip out west. So that was pretty awesome. And then we one up that with some travel around Europe. So I don't know how we're gonna one up that next time, but we'll have to think of something for sure. Um, but let's jump into it. So for those who don't know you, I'm sure a lot of people do know you at this point, but for those who don't, who is Wes? What do you get up to normally?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I guess it depends on the context, but I would say that I I love the outdoors. Like I love going for hikes or camping trips or biking or swimming. So living in Vancouver is definitely really convenient for that. Um, I like reading and cooking. And then I guess like um, I guess on a more sort of professional side of things, I'm really passionate about um, how to sort of direct what the internet becomes, like how the internet co-evolves with humanity, into something that like really fosters and supports healthy open societies. And I know that's super broad, but I would say that's kind of like that's what motivates me every day to get up and do my work.
Nice. It's a big goal. That's awesome. Um, let's rewind a little bit. So you graduated a couple years ago, just like myself. Grew up out west, and then went to school on the very opposite side of Canada, out east. Talk me through that. What was that like?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question because people are always confused as to why did I travel to the other coast of Canada to go to school. And so in high school, um, I guess just really quickly, I mean, I was always interested in science and math. Those were usually my favorite courses. Did well in them, and I had this like so I went to a pretty small high school, but I had this sense that it was important to do well in school and to be involved in like leadership roles and community involvement. Um, and But I guess I didn't have a ton of I guess I didn't have like a ton of awareness or mentorship or exposure to like university life, or just like what post secondary education could look like. Um, but nonetheless, I knew I knew it was important to like take school seriously. And I guess in grade 12, my counselor told me about the Schulich Leader Scholarship application. So we sort of went through the like the sort of the application process to be nominated by my school. I ended up being nominated, and then I applied to the University of New Brunswick because for some reason my older brother had gone there a year before I did. I think he applied because he wanted to play university football, and they had a small football team. Um, so that's the reason why I applied to UMB, was because my brother had gone there and he had recommended that I apply. So I applied for the Schulich Leader scholarship, and they offered it to me, and that kind of, I guess, made the decision for me. Like, yeah, I wasn't going to turn that down.
Definitely. And good experience, it sounded like, out there, being out east.
Yeah, it was a great experience. So I was there for 5 years, and for those that have never been there, Fredericton's, it's a beautiful city. It's quite small. Really great city to be a university student. It's really affordable, super easy to get around, especially if you have a bike, and just absolutely beautiful in the summers. And the Maritimes are really nice for road trips and other kinds of adventures.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been out there, but it's a good place to be for sure. So let's fast forward a little bit. So after graduating, what did you start doing for work, and how'd you get started?
Yeah. Okay. So after I graduated, I graduated in 2020. So right sort of when COVID hit, and the intention was to actually go back to school for a master's program in Switzerland, um, in September 2020. So I had this. What the intention was, just a summer between my undergrad and grad school. Um, so I wasn't looking for any serious work for the summer, and I ended up getting a research job at UMB. Um, but as COVID unraveled, I had a sense that it was going to last. It was hard to say how long it was going to last, but I had a sense it was is going to last for much longer than the duration of the summer. And then the school that I had applied to, ETH, in Switzerland, they offered they offered all international students or they gave them the option to defer the start of their studies for a year. Um, so I decided to do that. It just didn't make sense to try and move to a new country and start school in the middle of a pandemic where there's so much uncertainty. So what I did instead is, at the end of that summer research job, I moved back to BC, to my hometown of Pemberton, and lived there for a number of months, unemployed. But then um, after a few months, I moved to Vancouver, and that's where my career really started to pivot away from university. But I guess I just want to check in with you if that's the right story to go down.
That's your story. So yeah, that's the right story. And I know earlier you mentioned you work in Holochain. So for me, that was a new term, hearing that for the first time. So for someone like myself who may have never heard about Holochain, doesn't know what it is, what is it? What are you guys working on?
Yeah, I guess just quickly before I answer that question, just to finish off the where I
Mm.
was what I was just talking about. So yeah, when I moved to Vancouver, I basically, through a number of kind of serendipitous interactions, got introduced to this technology called Holochain, which we'll get into. But it's, in one sentence, it's like a toolkit for developing completely distributed and peer-to-peer applications of almost any kind. Um, and I did a little bit of blockchain related work in university. And like I thought it was cool, but I just wasn't like super drawn to it. I was more interested in sort of energy related technologies like clean energy, renewable energy systems. But when I was introduced to Holochain and I started learning about it, I was just completely mind blown, because it was such a novel approach to distributed software systems that I had never come across. And that in itself was really uh, just like really appealing from like an intellectual point of view, because I'm just a really curious person. And so I was like, oh man, I want to learn more about this technology and the people behind it, and what are their motivations and what's their vision for the future of this tech. Um, and then, yeah, again, through a series of like very sort of serendipitous interactions, I managed to find myself in a position where um, I had a job as a software developer, working with Holochain.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just on Holochain, like you mentioned Holochain, you mentioned blockchain. Blockchain's probably a term that more people have heard, but maybe not everybody. So what is blockchain and what's Holochain? What's the difference between them?
Yeah. So that's a hard question, because they're not uh, easy things to explain and understand. So I guess I would just say for anyone listening, like I will not be able to explain it completely, but I guess maybe, yeah, I'll try and like introduce um, some conceptual models that might help you think about this stuff. Um, so I would say, like in a very simplified way, blockchain is, I mean, the favorite, like my favorite analogy to use, because I think this one just to me makes the most sense, is you can think of a blockchain as like a spreadsheet, like an Excel spreadsheet that um, exists on a bunch of different people's computers, and there's protocols set up and rules in place so that if someone tries to add a new row to this to a spreadsheet on their computer, they can only add new rows if it follows a certain set of rules. Um, or I mean, technically, they could do whatever they want to the spreadsheet on their device, but if they try and sort of tell other computers, hey, look at this new row I added to my spreadsheet, you should update your spreadsheet to have the same row so that we all have the same spreadsheet syncing between our devices, which is like the blockchain. um, Other people will like check if the new rows that were added to the spreadsheet followed the rules, and if it doesn't follow the rules, they will reject that and say, no, I'm not, like, that's not right, I'm not going to update my spreadsheet. And then the idea is that if enough people are kind of like participating in this network and following the rules, um, collectively they'll be able to maintain a spreadsheet that follows the predefined rules. um, and in that way we can like use that spreadsheet to represent a whole bunch of things like financial transactions, and we can trust that those are legitimate transactions, and no one's hacking it or trying to do fraudulent stuff. Yeah, I don't know, how was that, does that, do you have any questions, or does that make any sense at all?
No, no, the spreadsheet one, that analogy makes sense. Like I think it's a confusing topic. So I think when you mentioned that kind of unlocked something for me. And then the difference for Holochain, what would
Yeah.
that be? The differentiation between the two?
Um, yeah, okay. So also not an easy question to answer quickly. I guess the main difference is, so I guess I kind of need to go back to the blockchain story or analogy. So we call blockchains distributed, um, which is true in the sense that there's a bunch of different computers out there that sort of hold this spreadsheet and are checking against all the other computers that hold it and making sure people are following the rules. But that's only one piece of the blockchain picture. Then there's also people that have crypto wallets or cryptocurrency wallets. Um, so I would like, most people that participate in a blockchain system are not actually contributing to making it distributed. And what I mean by that is most people that participate in blockchain are just people that have cryptocurrency wallets, which really is basically you have like a digital ID that you basically just have like a like a unique user name in a sense that you have control over. Like there's a it's almost like you have a username and a password. It's called your public key and your private key. That doesn't really matter. The point is that you kind of have like a password and a username, and you're in control of your password, so that when you say want to send cryptocurrency to someone or receive cryptocurrency, what you do is on your phone or on your computer that has your cryptocurrency wallet, you would communicate to a computer that actually has the blockchain on it, has the spreadsheet. You don't hold any of the spreadsheet at all on your phone or on your computer. Um, but there's a network of people that do, and that's kind of what makes it sort of distributed. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that most people don't actually hold any of the blockchain on their device. They just communicate with other people that do. And so it's the reason I'm saying that is because this is where Holochain starts to become quite different than blockchain, because Holochain is one, not like, so a blockchain is like one spreadsheet, for all intents and purposes. It's one sort of like digital file or one database that's just synced across multiple devices. Holochain is a toolkit to develop applications that are completely peer-to-peer and distributed. So I guess there could be, hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of different Holochain applications, and each Holochain application creates its own network. And I guess what I mean by that, and stop me and ask any questions if you have any, but basically, like if you created a Holochain application, the application would, if you think of it as like each application has its own like spreadsheet in a sense, like a database to hold whatever it is, posts, messages, calendar events. Each person participating in that Holochain application will actually hold a little piece of the spreadsheet. Like they'll hold, I don't know, 10 rows or something, and someone else will hold another 10 rows. And then this way, the database itself, the spreadsheet, the data that makes up the application is like truly distributed among all the users of the application. So there's no like miners or what's in blockchain called full nodes that hold the entire spreadsheet, and then people that just communicate with them. It's like everyone is basically hosting the data for the application. But I'm just
So
gonna,
it's like a smaller piece of the pie, kind of. They're not holding the whole pie, but just a smaller sliver.
yeah,
Is that right?
exactly. And then another thing too is that in Holochain, you store all of your data locally first. So if there was like an Instagram Holochain application, all of your posts and comments and everything that, like all of the data you create, all your stories, they would be stored locally on your device, whether it's your phone or your computer. And then the bits of information, like posts that are you've posted publicly, will get shared to the network, and then it might get stored on multiple different people's devices. So there's no server, there's no Facebook or Meta owned server farm that you post and then it actually gets stored on their device. It's stored on your device, and then it's stored on the devices of other people using the application. And I guess what this allows is it it's a it's a it's a system design pattern that I guess at least in theory, in the Holochain organization is doing a lot of testing, but it in theory is like much more scalable than blockchain. And that's one of the challenges that blockchain faces, that it's really hard to scale the application, because each new device that contributes to distributing it has to hold the entire blockchain. And there's just a lot of computing resources that are required to ensure that no one tampers with it. But in Holochain, um, it uses a different set of like validation rules to make sure that no one's tampering with the little bits of spreadsheet that are distributed across the network.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. I like that analogy with the spreadsheet because I think it makes it approachable for everybody. Like I'm not a programmer, but I think most of us have probably used spreadsheets and kind of understand that. I guess the more rows you're adding, it just becomes bigger and bigger. So to have it split up among people makes sense for sure. So that kind of covers the what, like what is Holochain, what is blockchain. Um, but I think what's probably more interesting is like why Holochain, and for you as somebody that's working on really cutting edge technology, what do you see the future looking like with Holochain?
Um, yeah, so um, it's a big question, and sometimes I don't totally know the answer to that, but I would say that I'm personally drawn to Holochain because, one, it's so um it's so versatile in what you can do with it. And so that in some sense is just, as someone who likes programming, is really exciting. Like there's so much room for creative application development. And so yeah, on one level, like that's one reason why I'm really excited about it. Um, and I guess the other thing too is that when, like, let's say we live in a world where um, most people are using multiple holochain applications, like for most of the things they need to do, whether it's messaging friends or organizing events or ordering delivery, because every holochain application hosts, like it stores your data locally first. um, it creates an environment where we can develop interoperability and composability. Those are two kind of fancy sounding words, so I can expand on them. But it creates an environment where you can really create customized experiences and applications and user interfaces that sort of span across a bunch of different applications that you're using. Um, and so, yeah, I just find that really exciting because I don't really know what that's going to look like. But when there's no, like, when sort of application silos don't really exist, and then there's instead of, because right now applications are kind of like, a user interface is highly tightly coupled to the application, or the data of the application. Like you can only use your Instagram user interface feed with Instagram posts and Instagram data. But let's say in like, I don't know, a hypothetical future where there's more holochain applications, like there might be a market, or like an app store that's literally just different user interfaces that just display your Instagram data, your Snapchat, your calendar events, your emails, whatever, um, in different ways, and people could create different um, algorithms for what shows up in your news feed, um, different um, different systems for like what kind of reactions can, like, instead of just like liking or disliking something, there could be a bunch of different ways to react to posts. um, but yeah, I'm just going to leave it there for now, and check in, because there's it's a very expansive it, it could be a very expansive question, so I don't want to get too sidetracked.
No, it's all good. I think that's an interesting one that I know like you and I have talked about this a little bit, just me being curious about what you're up to. But I think that's maybe one thing that I didn't realize before is like you mentioned that uh the storing the data locally and then that kind of opening up doors. If I was to think about like the apps that I use, you mentioned a couple of them like Instagram, Facebook, all that. Um, I guess today those companies hold our data, but if it's distributed among a network that is decentralized, basically, it opens up more opportunities for what we the users can actually do with that data. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah,
Cool.
exactly. um yeah, and so I guess the other thing I would say is that um it's kind of going back to what I said at the very beginning. Like, what motivates me every day is like, I really want to live in a world where the internet and the applications we use are not, or not all of them are, but a lot of them today are sort of, their business model is built around exploiting psychological vulnerabilities of being human, and we all have psychological vulnerabilities, like that's just part of being human.
Hmm.
um, but apps like Twitter and Facebook and TikTok and whatever, um, because of the business model, and because of the fact that yeah, the sort of ad based revenue model, and their incentive to maximize the amount of time you spend on the site, it just leads to a lot of sort of second and third order societal and individual consequences that I just don't think are super healthy for society, and people's mental health in general. Um, and so like, I'm just excited about, it doesn't have to be Holochain itself, but just maybe Holochain is a bridge, or it opens up the possibility for a new kind of um, a new set of internet applications that are more built around like social groups and the needs that social groups have. And yeah, I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's definitely fun to think about.
No, that's cool. And I think whenever we hear like Web3, like a lot of people think NFTs or just Bitcoin or stuff like that. But although that doesn't sound, maybe to most people, it doesn't sound as groundbreaking. I think the things that you're talking about, like all these new opportunities that come with this technology, that's exciting. Like I think I can see why it's such a transformative thing. So, no, it's quite cool. One thing we haven't talked too much about, but I think you kind of dipped into it a little bit there with the why basically for Holochain. Like you cross me just even outside of the Holochain work, you cross me as the kind of person that does things because they're passionate about it. Like you mentioned some of the activities you do outside of work. But what drove you to Holochain? Like I understand the why you mentioned there. Is that the driving reason why you're doing Holochain versus working at a software company or something like that? A normal
Um,
software company, something more traditional.
yeah, I mean, so there's a few reasons. One is, I think I mentioned a little bit, it's just like the intellectual curiosity. Like, it's such a novel paradigm for software web application development, that it's just like, I just want to learn more about that and become more familiar with it and understand that better, almost for this pure sake of curiosity. Um, and then I guess the other reason too is that when I learned about the technology, it was clear to me that there was a lot of integrity behind the organization that was developing it. It was clear that they weren't trying to market something and oversell what it could actually do, like what its utility was in the world. They were like authentic, and it seemed like they had values that I really aligned with. And I also it was just clear to me that there was going to be a really high demand for holochain applications at some point in the next, I don't know, 10 years or something. And so when I pivoted away from my plan of going back to grad school, it was like, well, I know that if I pursue a career in holochain, even though right now it's not like the most stable environment, I'm working as an independent contractor, there's not a ton of like employment opportunities yet. It's kind of like anticipating that if I become an expert in holochain now, there's just going to be like um, a very sort of stable like work environment in the future. Like I know I'll have sort of career stability. Maybe not in these next upcoming years, but even now, um, I've been sort of I've gotten involved in so many more projects than I thought I would have gotten involved in such a short amount of time. Like I haven't even been developing Holochain for a year, and it's such a small community of developers at the moment that it's like once you're in and you understand the technology and you can demonstrate that you can work with it, like everyone that's working on a Holochain project and that has funding for Holochain projects will reach out to you. Um, and then I guess the last thing for the why is um, I've been following. I don't know if you know the Center for Humane Technology at all, or the documentary The Social Dilemma.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I guess I've been following. So the Center for Humane Technology is a nonprofit organization in based in California, and uh, they helped create the Netflix documentary called The Social Dilemma. Um, and I guess the whole point of the documentary is to show that um, like the way social media platforms are designed is incompatible with democracy, because it polarizes society, um, and a polarized society cannot really sort of deliberate on important social issues very effectively. So I think the big picture why is like I want to help um, ensure that open societies and democracies, open democracies, can thrive into the 21st century. And it's clear that we need to start looking at digital tools and digital technologies and integrating them as best we can to sort of continuously reinvent what democracy expresses itself as. Like right now, we have a very particular structure and a very particular system and a very particular way of engaging citizens in the deliberation process and the lawmaking process. But there's no reason why that can't sort of become more agile and integrate digital technologies. And it's hard to say what I couldn't tell you the exact link between Holochain and sort of highly effective democracies that incorporate digital technologies, but um, that's kind of yeah, I would say that's the biggest picture why for like what motivates me and why I'm so passionate about Holochain.
Sweet. No, that's awesome. It's cool. It's always cool when when you see people doing things where it becomes obvious that it's not just a job for them. Like there's a passion that kind of that drives what you're doing. So I think no, that's awesome to hear. Couple more questions for you before we wrap up. Um, so you mentioned on the uh, just before you were talking about the social dilemma, you mentioned one of the things was that once you get into the community and you can show them that you know how to work with it, then you're kind of welcomed in with open arms. But for a lot of people, especially because you're working on something so early stage, if there's other students in the network, which I'm sure there are, that are passionate about early stage technology, where the path might not be as clear as going into your normal job that you hear about more often. How would you recommend they get started? I know that's kind of a general question, but maybe give people a couple ideas.
Yeah, so I'll start with Holochain specifically first, and then maybe I'll try and generalize my experiences, and maybe that could be helpful for other people in similar situations. Um, I guess if you're a software developer or just interested in Holochain, I would say like totally feel free to reach out to me. I think there will probably be contact information wherever this episode is distributed. Otherwise, like I'm on the Facebook in the Facebook group and stuff. So yeah, like totally feel free to reach out to me. Um, and then I guess like so what I did is I just tried to get there's an online forum and there's a few Discord servers for Holochain supporters, and like you really like just put yourself out there, ask questions, try and learn. Like if it's Holochain specifically that you're interested in, like just go through the tutorials, try to understand what it is, ask questions, and then like I was saying, it's such a small community. Like if you're on the Discord server and it's clear that you're really interested in the technology, and like you're trying really hard to like develop with it, chances are someone will probably just like reach out to you and be like, hey, like, do you want a job, or do you want to work on this project? um and I guess what like but I guess pursuing a very sort of uncertain, unconventional career path, or trying to get involved in a technology in the really early stages, and especially when it's not like going through the sort of um, typical like venture capital fundraising cycle. um, like you have to take a little bit of risk, and the risk that I took is that I decided to um, I declined my acceptance into my grad program before I actually had confirmed work as a holochain developer. So that was like definitely um scary for sure, because it was like, okay, like I no longer have a path that's clearly defined. Like I actually need to um I don't know, like I'll have to figure something out. I'm going to have to convince someone with money that holochain is valuable and they should pay me to develop something with it. um Luckily I didn't have to go that sort of direct. I was connected with um this small company that one of the members of used to work for the Holochain organization. So he um, took me on as a mentor and is teaching me a lot. Um, so I mean, yeah, it's hard to generalize my experience, because there is a lot of I would say just like good fortune, good timing involved, and like a lot of just chance uh, interactions with people. But like having a mentor is just incredibly valuable. I think no matter what industry you're trying to pursue. Um, yeah, I don't know. Was that clear enough
That was
for
clear.
Holochain stuff?
Yeah. No, that's perfect. So you're not saying we should throw out our offers and all drop our degrees today, or is that the message?
Um, it it depends on the person. Like I was fairly confident that um like I've developed software before, so I had a little bit of software development experience.
You
And
weren't doing it blind. You weren't just closing
yeah,
your eyes and
like
dropping
it
out. Yeah.
exactly. Like it wasn't a complete leap of faith. It was
Mhm.
just, okay, I know that I can become competent as a developer in Holochain. It's just going to take time, and I'm going to have to convince people or demonstrate that to people. And it's not super clear where the job opportunities are or where the income streams would be, but I knew they were there. So yeah, it depends. It really depends. Like if you have a family and kids, which I'm sure some Schulich leaders will be in that position at some point
Mhm.
soon. Um, Probably not the best idea to like give up something clear. But yeah, I mean, uh,
No, that I think that probably resonates with a lot of people. Like I think one thing I hear a lot about in the SLX events, it's just a good place to kind of connect with Schulich leaders you don't really see every day. And one common theme that I hear about a lot is a lot of people just being appreciative for the scholarship and the fact that it allows them to kind of take some risks because they're not worried about paying for school as much or something like that. So that's cool when you hear about people actually taking those risks. And obviously, you want to do it with, like you said, you weren't doing it with just jumping full leap of faith, but you had a plan, and maybe it wasn't all clearly figured out, but obviously we're young and you figure things out along the way. So no, it's cool. And we talked a lot about like what you do and some really big problems that might seem um, intimidating to some people, especially when you might just be starting university or something like that. But as much as you're working on a lot of cool stuff and smart guy, you're also a normal guy. Like you do other stuff outside of work and chasing big goals. So like what kind of things do you do to unplug and how does that kind of help the work that you do?
um, yeah. Well, I mean, like I was saying, I love the outdoors. Um, so going for hikes or camping, that's not super frequent, right? That can only really happen a certain time of year. But I go for lots of bikes. Like there's a nice park nearby. If I'm working, I need to just like wind down or clear my head, I'll bike to this park and just walk through the forest and I don't know, look at trees or look at a stream. And
You're in the
just
right
to
spot for that. Out
yeah,
west is awesome.
yeah. And I mean, yeah, we even got on some really awesome outdoor adventures when I was visiting. We went hiking in Ireland. So it's really just stuff like that. Um, Going to the gym and exercising. Um, I try to do yoga at least a few times a week if I can
That's
convince
cool.
myself to.
Nice.
Um, yeah. Oh, and then I'd say this is an important one actually because this is where I was introduced to Holochain. Is I volunteer at this collaborative community garden in Vancouver. So like every Sunday, if I don't have any plans, I'll go to this small garden, and there's usually between 5 and 10 other people there. Um, and just really cool people, different walks of life, different ages, different careers. And we all just get our hands dirty and plant things or weed things or move dirt around, and tend to this garden. And I mean, that truly changed my life because they introduced me to Holochain, and
That's wild.
provided me with, yeah, so last summer they they had some funding. They're like this sort of society that, and they have some like there's basically a philanthropist that's part of the organization, and she wants to um, help uh, fund projects that align with their values, which are like regenerative culture, regenerative society, etc. So were they were sort of gracious enough to like provide some funds for the summer so that I could learn more about Holochain, and then that's what sort of that was like the on ramp to becoming a developer with the technology. but yeah, nothing too crazy. Just getting outside, spending time with good people, having good conversations, um, catching up with friends and family. Uh,
Definitely.
yeah,
Nice. No, it's been awesome. I think that's about it for questions for me. And I think even though I know you and I've heard your story a couple times, I actually learned quite a bit on the call. So I can't imagine for people who don't know you, I'm sure they're going to get a ton out of this. So thanks for taking the time and really appreciate it. And hope to see you soon. Like I said before, we got to find a way to one up the trip
yeah,
next time. We set the bar
totally.
high.
Just one last quick thing.
Yeah, go for it.
A thought that came to me to try and um, maybe provide a different way to think about um, like Web3 with Holochain is
Yeah.
um, like because so right now our online spaces are quite monoculture. Like there's one platform and there's like a very defined um, set of interactions that are possible, and the user interface is the same for everybody. But in the real world, like if you go to a friend's house or a family's house, or you're hanging out with friends, like each social group has very unique elements to it. Like, you go to a friend's house, it has a certain smell, and there's a certain sense of humor that works in that friend group, or there's certain etiquettes, and like every social group has its own unique kind of cultural attributes to it. And right now, that is not very well reflected in our digital tools. Like, yeah, you can customize the color of the messages in Facebook Messenger, but that's about it. Like, you can't create a digital space that is unique to that social group. And that's kind of um, another aspect of Holochain. And there's actually a few different projects that are trying to do exactly that, is provide a set of tools like Lego bricks, but the digital app, like Lego bricks for building applications, so that groups of people of any size, friend groups, communities, governments, whatever, companies, can assemble these digital Lego bricks and create unique digital spaces that reflect the values and the culture of that group more authentically. Yeah, just wanted to end, or at least get that thought out there, because maybe that will resonate with some people.
Yeah, it's inspiring. It goes back to what you said earlier about like you're distributing that data, and then when you do that, new opportunities arise. So that's awesome. I'm excited, and I don't know anything about this space. So I guess for people who are into Web3 or people who just want to get into it, you know where to go. Contact
Yeah,
Wes, and there'll be some
yeah,
contact info below.
totally. Yeah, this was great, Danny. I'll have to interview next time.
Definitely, tables turned. Throw me the
Yeah,
hard questions, and
exactly.
yeah, it'll be a good chat. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. All right. Well, thanks a lot, and yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Take care. I'll see you later.
See you.